Don't we rumble? Float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Ah, rumble, young man, rumble. Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
It's time to get in the ring with the cornermen, preparing dentists for the next round. We give you business insights, trends, and timely information. And we'll interview experts to help you make smart financial decisions. Now, here are your cornermen, Rob Joyce and Mike Bark.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Cornerman podcast. Today, we are being joined by Corey Keel and Jill Shu from Custom Dental Solutions, and they've sort of been on the front lines of reopening offices and going through a lot of the safety protocols and a lot of the scripting you have to do with your patients now. How do you reschedule patients? What should you be doing within your practice? So Corey and Jill, happy to have you here. And if you could maybe just start by telling us a little bit about your company and what you guys do and maybe some of your experiences, and we can kind of get into some questions from there.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Rob. We appreciate you having us on your broadcast and just the ability to hopefully give some great tips to your private practice dental offices and so forth. So that's what we do at Custom Dental Solutions. We serve private practice owners, and we provide them solutions from HR solutions to administrative training to culture solutions. And so we have been, as you said, on the front lines of just really opening these practices and reopening them for probably about the last 3 months, truthfully, and trying to come up with what the CDC guidelines state, and then also what makes sense for best practices in opening these dental practice safely. So that's a little bit about us. And Jill is joining us, and she is our kind of our number two. She's our second in command at our company and does a lot of the solutions and system-based solutions for the offices. And if you've had any training with Jill, you know that she loves to solve your problems.
You bet. Thank you for having us. Yes, it's wonderful to be able to help you guys reopen and be successful in it.
Yeah, right off the bat, let's get right into it. Try to get some of these answered. I think the biggest question, Corey and Jill, all right, one of my employees just tested positive for COVID. What do I do? You don't have to get in a legal sense, but like, what's best practices right then?
Yeah, so this is the famous question right now, simply because we're encountering it so much. And I know this for us, we've had 3 offices this week, and it's only Tuesday that have had this question in their practice. So what we're advising them to do is to contact their health department right away and let them know they do have a positive exposure within the practice. So every health department, every county, every state has different requirements of what that looks like for their practice. So they're going to do a little bit more of a more detailed investigation as to what that means, whether that means that the team goes home in quarantine, or the practice is shut down, or the practice isn't shut down at all. So the health department will do a little bit more of a bigger investigation when it comes to that. But number one, they need to call their health department and get that guideline taken care of first.
I think one of the things that comes up too is we're getting a lot of the, hey, I knew a person who knew a person who knew a person who knew a person's cousin who had
Yeah.
coronavirus, and now do I get 2 weeks of sick pay to do it? You know, in terms of, you know, consulting people that may have been exposed to coronavirus indirectly, how are you guys dealing with that, or what are your recommendations there?
So I guess I can attribute to something that we experienced actually back in June. We did have a practice where there was a spouse that was exposed to a COVID positive person in his workplace, and his wife was the dental assistant. And so it was, okay, her husband has to go home in quarantine, and now he's apparently exposed his wife, a dental assistant, who doesn't want to stop working. How does that look? So we called the health department, and the health department said, well, number one, he's not exposed. So, you know, his company is going to do what they want with him to send him home, and he's going to quarantine, but the employee has the right to work. So I think that's something that people are kind of failing to are neglecting to understand at this time, because you may have been exposed to someone, or you know of somebody like your cousin's friend and you happen to have been at a party with them 3 weeks ago or whatever, and you're asymptomatic, you don't just stay home. You do have a right to work. So that's, and I'm not an attorney or anything like that. We work with attorneys to help make the best choices in these situations. But remembering an employee does have a right to work. So in that particular situation, since this was 2 months ago already, and it was still kind of new as people were coming back to work, we actually just sat down with the team and said, hey, look, this is what's going on. This dental assistant wants to come back into work. Her husband doesn't, has been exposed. He's home quarantined. How does the team feel? Because at that point, doctor said, look, we're not going to deal with whispers, people, not feeling comfortable being around this particular team member just because there is a potential exposure. And so we just kind of directly communicated what made sense. The whole team agreed that they were comfortable with her working, and it was business as usual. Here we are 2 months later, and no one had any positive exposures, and nobody had any symptoms or signs or anything like that. So I guess the bottom line for this, Mike, is it's really case by case. But I think we are seeing, again, more of these people that are feeling like, well, I knew someone exposed, or somebody that worked in this workplace. And we have to kind of go on as business as usual unless you're exhibiting symptoms. Jill, do you have anything to add to that?
I think the biggest thing that you said that really is an indicator of somebody's success in keeping these exposures and at bay, and also understanding the true risk, is the communication. The offices that have completely neglected the communication, they're the ones that their teams are suffering the most. They're the teams that are also the most nervous and the most cautious on how they're doing things, because they don't understand what the expectation is and what the requirements are. They're going off of Facebook groups of, well, so-and-so is recommending this in Utah. And it's like, we're in Wisconsin. What's Wisconsin recommending with our current case status? So I think communication is first and foremost between your team and your patients. You've got to communicate. That's the key.
How would you recommend the communication? Is it for from dentists to patients? Are we going about it on a kind of calling each patient regarding their COVID policy? That's maybe a little overkill. Or should it just be maybe an email blast, or having it on your website? Having a dedicated spot on your website, maybe the first thing you see when you go to their website right now, is maybe a good way to do it.
It's interesting because we are seeing a lot of variety when it comes to how we're communicating with our patients, the protocols we have in place and we've made to keep our team and our patients safe. The website is number one. You've got to have a COVID-19 protocol on your website. Patients have to be able to see that. It's not required, but it's wonderful when you as a patient can log on and see, this is what my provider is doing. It's also nice for the team to see that in written protocol on the website as well. But on a case-by-case situation, our third-party communication software should be texting our patients, emailing our patients. We should be keeping our patients in the loop of everything that's going on, any changes that have been made. We just had an office where when the mask mandate passed in Wisconsin, they had not communicated quick enough that they were mandating masks in their practice. And they had a huge flux of patients calling saying, are you wearing masks? What's the protocol? So I think you do also have to use those third-party communications to notify and communicate with your patients. On the other side of it, we also need to do pre-COVID screening. And a lot of that is via text or a phone call. And that's what's holding up a lot of our administrators during this COVID time, is because we're doing more communications with our patients. Our phones aren't stopping. So we have to have that phone call and say, here's your pre-COVID questionnaire. Have you had any exposure? Have you had any symptoms? Do you have a fever? You go through your 11 questions that you have. At that time is also a great time to then say, here's our mask protocol, here's what we're doing in our office to keep you safe, and you're communicating that at the time of the pre-screen.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that too, Rob, with our clinical team, patients are coming in and and being seated in our chairs and asking what we've done to change the clinical environment for them. I just heard that yesterday. I was in a practice and I was sitting there listening, and the hygienist seated the patient, and the patient said, "What have you done differently since I was here last?" And patients are, you know, they're seeing stuff on the news, they're hearing stuff, they're seeing stuff on social. Our team needs to be prepared with the right answers too. So we don't ever want people to think we were not safe and following protocols previous to COVID. We want them to know that everything we did in the past was amazing and excellent as well. But to make you feel more comfortable and to make you feel more safe, this is now what we've done to enhance your experience at our practice.
What do you think the number one thing is that puts patients at ease to hear, well, now you're doing X or now you're doing Y? What's the best thing that a dentist can tell their patients they're doing differently?
So I think we have to speak their language a little bit. I don't want to act like we're playing a game, because in dentistry, especially those of us in the clinical element, we know that our infection control, hopefully pre-COVID, was excellent anyway. So we don't want to play a game and act like, oh, everything's great now, we're double gloving, we're doing all these crazy things. No, we want to let them know, especially right now, masks are super hot. That's a hot topic. So I think letting people know that we're using a really special mask for you. They're being changed out between each patient, and we're thinking, gee, they were before anyway. But just speaking that to them. Every mask is fresh and clean for us. We use these HEPA filters in our treatment rooms to filtrate the air. You know, kind of giving them specifics. I've seen patients literally just want to look at these things, the filtration, they want to look at the face shields that we're wearing, and letting them know we're protecting them as well, and letting them know, like, hey, we took your temperature when you walked in. Our staff, our team we're taking temperatures with our team before they see you as well.
Sure.
So those are things that I think are number one.
Do you see any of your offices testing their staff on a regular basis? I know it's a question that has come up with some of our dentists, where a patient would call and go, are you testing your staff every day? Which seems a bit like overkill and would be difficult to do, but has anybody put in a testing protocol at this point?
None of our clients have, and I haven't heard of anybody. I do have to say I get a tremendous kick out of the fact when I walk into a practice and they won't even let me through the door, and they're like, stop. What?
Taking a temperature.
Taking your temperature. Where have you been and what have you been doing? And I love that they're being possessive of their culture that way, you know, and they want to be particular to protect their environment. But I haven't heard of anybody mandating any sort of testing. I think the thing that we need to realize too is tests are not going to happen unless you have symptoms, or unless you're getting a surgical operational procedure or something like that. And then obviously the hospitals will have guidelines on who needs to be tested. But there is no, you know, there isn't anything where, and even legally, I mean, again, I'm not an attorney. I don't think legally we can mandate someone to have a COVID test in our practice at all. I don't believe we could do that.
In the reopening, what so far, I mean, we see the financial statements, and so far it seems like there's been a pretty good bounce back, and we're unsure, is that pent up demand? Is that people are more comfortable than maybe we give them credit for? But what has been your guys' biggest challenges in reopening these practices so far?
I think right now the struggle is, yes, there's a high demand, but it's temporary. You know, we were closed for 8 weeks, and a lot of offices had over 200 patients that hygiene schedule alone had to be rescheduled. So we've got 8 weeks that we're trying to squeeze in, when most of us, you know, in a healthy practice, we were already having a waiting time for hygiene. And I speak in terms of hygiene because doctor schedules from the hygiene department for the most part, unless there's an emergency. So the hygiene really kind of predicts the flow of the rest of the practice. But now the struggle that we're going to start seeing, and that we've already started to see, and you know, anybody who's on today's meeting will know, if you're looking at your schedule, October, November, it's becoming really sparse, and there may not be many patients. A lot of people turned off ReCare, and they weren't communicating patients to bring extra people in because they didn't have anywhere to put them. They dreaded the phone ringing. But now we're looking at October, November going, how do I fill the schedule? I've got days where I have 1 hygiene patient for 3 hygienists. What do I do? So that's the biggest thing is we're needing to overcome now.
Yeah, we had one client too that was having a problem with rescheduling from a standpoint of they'd have a full schedule and then they'd get 2 or 3 calls, and you probably heard this, that they weren't comfortable yet coming in, and they would reschedule that client or that patient for 2 or 3 weeks down the road, and then only to get to 2 or 3 weeks down the road and say, I'm not comfortable coming in. So that patient is continually taking up the slots, and they were scheduling them. Now I think, and you can say if this is a kind of a good approach to it, now they're trying to ask the patients to call us when you're ready to reschedule, instead of taking a slot 2 or 3 times down and 2 or 3 weeks out and then having them call back. So I think that's a really hard position to be in, but I think it's probably the best way to do it, rather than rescheduling constantly and feeling like you have a full day only to have a half day or whatever. Maybe just have them reschedule when they're comfortable. Hopefully it's that October, November time.
Or we're scheduling out, offering a 6-month schedule. I'm a firm believer that our gift that just keeps on giving is you leave our practice with a scheduled appointment always. Because patients, time gets away, and before you know it, it's been 2 years since they've been in. And I do try to promote try to get something scheduled. In this case though, Rob, that's the hard thing, is we can't predict how long this is going to happen. In March, we were hopeful it would be done in a month. And here we are hitting the 6-month mark since quarantine started in the United States, and it's still hitting us. So perhaps in this case, the 6-month would not work, but definitely trying to get something. But I think 3 weeks out, I wouldn't try to put anybody 3 weeks out. I would try to go out a little bit further, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the one caution of just telling them to call when they feel comfortable, is that, like you said, it'll be 2 years before they think about their teeth again. So, maybe if the dentist is doing that and then allowing patients to call when they're comfortable to come in, that at least keep a separate list of those patients, so that you can kind of constantly update and go back and remind them that if it has been 6 months and they're 9 months and a year, then you're going back to remind them that you haven't scheduled and you left it up to them. But they should feel, hopefully in a year we feel comfortable and everyone feels great coming back. But, remind them.
I mean, is there a way, I think, or should dental practices right now be reaching out to patients, and whether it's assuring them or essentially sending the message that at the end of the day, dentistry has always been a relatively sterile environment to begin with. Sterilization and those things were always taken seriously. This may be a more safe environment than going in to see your accountant.
Exactly.
Where we're not taking some of these precautions. We're not sterilizing our pens and our notepads every time we use them. And that at the end of the day, if you have infections or things like that, that could systemically make dealing with something like COVID even worse.
Yeah, I think so. I do think that the communication should have started a long time ago, like towards the beginning of when this kind of started coming down, just assuring the patients that what we do in dentistry is so, like I referenced before, our infection control is so amazing as it is. I was in an environment today, even I had to take my daughter to Children's Hospital for an appointment. And we're still doing so much more over and above in dentistry than Children's Hospital of Wisconsin is, and so I'm reminded of that when patients or, people say, I'm not comfortable going to the dentist. I read a statistic that's really technically about 5 to 8%. It shouldn't be more than that in your patient population. If it is, these people are probably not, really that comfortable, and, they're maybe using the excuse quite a bit. I'm not really sure. I do think it's valuable to give people grace. You shouldn't force someone to do something they're not comfortable with. But I think we're seeing now, we've moved into this time period where people are using COVID as an excuse for a lot of things. And now it's dental care too. And it's like, oh, I can't. But those are the same people that have no problem, maybe going out on the patio of a restaurant and having a drink, but yeah, you don't want to come to the dental office when we're so protected for you and you're in such a safe environment. It's hard. It's really hard to not be a little judgy that way. I had a doctor express that frustration He's a doctor in a small town. And he said, I know this person keeps saying they're not, oh, I'm not comfortable seeing you yet. But then, saw him at the local tavern. So it's like, where do you go with that? But I think the communication starting from the beginning, again, is just reassuring people. We have always been a huge champion in infection control and dentistry. We've done that from the beginning. And that's kind of been our course throughout this whole COVID thing in general, is just making sure you're reassuring people. We are doing our best from an infection control standpoint. We have done a few things to enhance that, like the air filters, and we're wearing N95s. When we're in an aerosolytic situation, you might see some face shields. But as a whole, I think in our experiences, patients really want to be seen, especially those patients that are at a higher compromised health situation. They understand, because they're in wonderful dental practices that have educated them, that they're a diabetic. They can't go 6 months, between dental visits, recare visits, perio maintenance. It's been really fun to see some of these practices really feel rewarded because they've trained their patients. They've trained them well to know, like, oh, I got to get in. I can't wait 3 months, or I build up, or, or I bleed. Like, they understand. So we've done a really good job of educating our patients. So I'm finding on the flip side, more people are desiring to be seen and want to be seen, and they're feeling safe, to do so. But I also see the frustration financially of somebody rescheduling several times. And I think I would probably, as to echo Jill too, I would schedule them a little bit later and not give them prime spots. Wouldn't give them 5 p.m. visit ever again. Save that for the person who's coming. That helps with the financial part of your day too.
Yeah. And for those, just to remind everyone, those who have logged in and are watching right now, if you do have a question, you can go ahead and type it in the chat. Megan is here helping us out, and we'll be able to see those questions, and we'll relay them to Jill and figure that out, a way to get those answers. So feel free to type away. We'll get those done. The one thing I know that came hard was the WHO recommending that you don't go visit your dentist, which came up. I think the ADA responded pretty sharply and did a good job with that. I'm assuming the WDA did too. But yeah, you're right. If you've trained your patients to understand that their oral health is, to their overall health, then it definitely helps. But if they're just thinking it's just clean teeth and, I just need to get the stains off once in a while, then it's probably a different story.
Is there a best practice, if you were to organize an office from the ground right now, if you were to put in certain safety protocols, what would those protocols be? How would they be communicated to the patients to give them some level of comfort coming in?
So I think if I was building a practice from scratch today and I was opening tomorrow, I would definitely have my sneeze guards in my administrative area. We still have some practices that just really don't want to do that. They don't like the coldness of what that feels like. However, we're seeing that all over, and patients feel comfortable with that, whether they're at Pick and Save getting their groceries or whatever. They want to see that plexiglass. So I would do that in my practice. I'd also have HEPA filters. And I think that this is something we've gotten away from in dentistry overall. I think, giving patients a flow of your practice where they see where the dirty instruments go and how they go through the sterilization process. You should be able to walk by that and have a clear view of what's clean and what's dirty. I don't think at this time I would go with like the UV lights. We do have an office that chose to do that. I think the science is still out a little bit on that. I'm not sure I'd invest in that financially. I think when it comes to these upgrades, it's a layering effect. You have to go with what is recommended to some extent, and you have to go with what you personally feel the science states along with your CDC guidelines. Again, I was at Children's Hospital today. I could sit in the reception area and read a magazine and get a beverage if I wanted to. All of our dental offices, we've cleared that stuff out, haven't we, Jill?
We can't find a drink in our reception areas.
So extreme. I think, you have to have some personal effects as well. But I probably would hesitate on maybe the beverage station and things like that, which we would normally advise to if you were building a beautiful office and opening tomorrow.
What were, do you know an idea of the cost on the UV lights? It can't be necessarily too high, but is there anything out there that has some scientific basis in it? And what would that cost to do? And what is the idea that you're just running UV light over all your equipment after each visit?
So the office that we have, that we work with that did install them, they have them on their ceilings in their treatment rooms.
Okay.
And they also have them in a room where they change out of their dirty clothes, their dirty scrubs.
Mhm.
So it's supposed to be like a decontaminant, basically. Jill, do you recall cost on that?
I couldn't tell you the exact cost. I do believe there was a couple $1,000s involved in the investment.
So it's nothing small. It's not like changing a couple light bulbs.
No,
Right. It's
pretty
not.
intense.
Yeah.
And I
And
believe they hired a person to come in who specializes in it to actually install as well. So that's probably where a lot of the price comes as well.
Sure.
probably.
A lot of clients have asked at this point, is this a good time to essentially shift away from the traditional model of dentistry, which has sort of been, we're going to have 3 hygienists going, 1 doctor, we're going to see every insurance under the sun. Doesn't make sense now to completely change the business model at this point. And shouldn't they be talking to somebody like you guys if they were going to be doing a massive change like that?
Yeah, this is a great question, Mike, because Jill and I are both smiling simply because this is happening. And I'm kind of
Nothing
surprised
right.
a little bit. I don't know what COVID did to people, but more and I don't know. I think there are a lot of doctors right now that are reconsidering their business model indeed. Particularly number one, and I'll let Jill speak to this since it's her area of expertise, is getting away from insurance-driven practices and starting to focus on the patients that they want to see versus taking everybody and everything and just producing, kind of evaluating what do I want my working lifestyle to be? Do I want it to be myself and 1 hygienist and we're fee for service and we're working 3 days a week? Or do we want to change to some of these different situations within the practice? So I definitely think I'll let Jill speak to that because that's really something she's been working with quite a bit lately on.
Yes, it's very interesting. I actually just had a phone call yesterday with somebody who was wondering what people were doing with insurances. Obviously, you go on podcasts, you look at anything online or go on any of the Facebook groups, and people talk about dropping the networks. Anybody who's ever worked with me knows I am not a fan of insurance contracts. However, it doesn't mean that it's not right for everybody or for somebody. There are practices that have built a very successful practice being in network with PPOs and contracted with insurances. I think right now is not the time to make drastic decisions. I do think that it's a great time to evaluate your philosophy of your practice and where your goals are and where you see the practice going. And then talking with somebody like Custom Solutions to help evaluate where you are in reaching those goals and getting you there. But to jump to dropping insurance networks when you have not had a steady increase in your production and your schedule goals, that's a little hasty for me. I think that we need to see a solid 1 year of financial steadiness and improvements before we just drop networks. Custom Dental Solutions does a lot of practice analyses right now where we're coming in and we're evaluating the insurances and the financial statuses of the practice. We don't want to see people just go, Delta, I'm done with you, I'm dropping you, effective immediately. Because unfortunately those patients, they're jumping ship not because they don't value the relationship of the practice, but also they're becoming more and more conscientious of their costs, and they can't afford to go out of network when they're now paying for Cobra or their plans are changing. Unsteady times, people start guarding their pockets. It's not the time to start making drastic changes within the practice that might affect your patients.
Yeah, Mike and I kind of joke that we've got a lot of Jerry Maguire clients out there now that are looking to grab the goldfish and kind of just shut it all down and go fee for service. And I think it's a good word of caution, especially during these times, is not to just drop it all. I think what we look at is 18 new patients a month is what it takes to maintain a practice. So if you're, if you're at 10, then you're going to be, you're kind of like, as you said, you're not on a growth phase. You're not even maintaining what you have.
Right.
So that's what we look. I'm not sure if Custom Dental has a way they look at it, but when we talk to people, like, okay, if you're 18 now, if you're at like 30 new a month, then maybe you can start looking at, and this is where Custom Dental Solutions would likely come in, is you can start looking at which insurance should I drop. It's not going to be an all-out drop them all, but you find out the ones that are probably doing the best case for the year, reimbursing at the highest, and then you keep those, and you take away some of the ones that have some of the lower patient load and lower fees. So, if they did want to do that with Custom Dental Solutions, do you have just a pure, let's get you organized from an insurance standpoint of what you should do? Do you have like a solution that's like, okay, we'll tell you if you should drop insurances or if you shouldn't?
Yes, we always start with our practice analysis. It's kind of like the x-rays for the practices. We have to start seeing where we're at. And that does involve us coming in, spending a few hours with your team in the practice, doing numbers, running finances. We do take it a step further because we've all worked in practices. I'm not just some person that comes in and says, I'm here to tell you how things are done in a practice. We've worked in a practice. We know what it's like. We understand the financial data and the reports, and we understand your software. And when we come in and we evaluate those insurances or any process, then we can properly advise, and we do truly customize our plans. There is no one size fits all. We are not cookie cutter. There is nothing about us that's cookie cutter. So I think we take great pride in customizing a package of what you need. You don't need everything, the sun, the moon, and the stars, if that's not what your practice is calling for at that time.
Sure. I think, some of our dentists are a little weary of consultants just at times because like, I don't want to just be on a retainer for $4 or $5 grand a month. And, I don't even know what I'm getting out of it, but I know that they're good consultants and I've heard their name before, so I'm going to bring them in. So it's nice that you customize it. The one thing I did have on PPE fees is one of our clients asked, so you can't increase a patient's fees for PPE to have them pay, call it $7 or $8 per visit for the PPE that you would be using, right? That's illegal to do, but is it legal to do that to charge that through to the insurance company? Is there a way to charge insurance for your increased fees?
So yes, you can always do an evaluation of your fees and do a small increase if that was what kind of the intent was to do at this time anyway. I am cautioning doing a flat increase, especially for offices that do have heavy contracts with insurances. They still have their fee. The insurance company still has their contracted agreed fee with your office. So increasing the fees is essentially just transferring all that cost to the uninsured patients, which is not fair. Mm-hmm. That's what we want to avoid doing. We don't want to upset those insurance. So there are insurance companies though that are paying PPE fees. So Delta Dental of Wisconsin, they did actually cut out a bulk check to all of their providers to help offset the costs. But that meant that none of their Delta patients could be charged for that. Guardian just released yesterday, anybody who's in network and are signed up for their EFTs, and if we have any administrators on the call, I can tell you their EFTs are not terrible. So make the move so you can actually take advantage. They are paying, I believe it's $7 to $8 per patient that you see during the months of August to the end of October. So that's something that they've made a change in. There's a few other insurances that they have implemented a PPE additional fee, but again, you're not charging that patient. Yeah. If you're not in network, you can charge out that D1999 code, which is an unspecified preventative code that's the ADA has called can be used for the PPE fee. You can bill that out, and the patient's responsible if there is no insurance. But now that New York has stated that it's illegal to charge a patient, and there's a lot of controversy and a lot of highlights put on this PPE fee, patients are becoming more and more wary of it, and they're going to start questioning things. When they walk in and your administrators aren't wearing a mask, and yet you're expecting them to pay $15 additional for the PPE fee. And they say, but you've always done it this way, right? It's very hard to reason with why we're charging an extra fee.
Sure. So let's move on to, I think, a few more evergreen topics or stuff that you guys deal with more in normal times, so it's not all COVID all the time. But building a team, building a staff, if you're going out there and hiring right now, what's the best way to conduct that process? How do you best enhance your chance of hiring a good staff? Because having run payroll here, we just noticed there's historically always been a lot of turnover in dentistry, and it's probably going to get worse as we go through this. Any best practices you guys have there?
Yeah, so with hiring right now, and I've been working with dental hiring for over a decade at this time, and specifically in our area, it's been the most challenging time I've ever encountered. I feel like I usually have some pretty good solutions, and it's been a little hard because we have a couple of different things that I think I'll just talk real directly about. As you guys know, I'm always a direct communicator anyway. I do find it very challenging when we have, let's take our dental hygienist group. And during COVID, there was a lot of information being sent to them through associations and through maybe social media and so forth that created a lot of fear in them returning to the workplace. And so right now, that's really challenging because we have hygienists that have chosen to stay home. They don't feel safe, or, you know, they feel perhaps they won't have childcare if their schools aren't fully open and some of these other things. And so for me, I am trying to kind of get the message out there that, hey guys, nothing's changed. We're still in a really safe environment. You're still in a great work environment. Your employers are trying to do the best that they can to keep the flexibility in the practice. I think our owners have to be more flexible than they've ever had to be before. Some things, you know, a couple of years ago or even a year ago, I would have said like, oh, that behavior, we cannot let that fly. That doesn't work. We do have to give people a little bit more. There's a mental health element here. And I wouldn't say as a whole, you know, we've had to deal with something like this before, but COVID did do a lot of things to people, and it made people realize like, hey, I want to change my lifestyle. Maybe I don't need this much money to live on, or maybe I don't want to be away from my children, or, you know, so coming to work has to be a value to them. So when I'm working with the owners, we have to find ways to reach that person. If they want to come back and they want to come back 3 days a week versus 4 days a week, if they're an excellent employee, we need to be flexible and allow that to happen and figure something out. As far as just like hiring straight up, I mean, we've tried hiring during COVID, during the beginning, like, you know, March, April, and you're doing these interviews with people with their masks, you're kind of saying hi, nobody's touching. It's really challenging to not see a facial expression during an interview, really challenging. So I do think we have to ask different questions when we're interviewing, even doing that phone screen than we've ever had to ask before. We need to find out if they have any concerns. And I've had candidates ask me, what's your practice doing and I'm safe during this time? Or what is your practice doing to, if we get shut down again, what does that mean? Because obviously you guys had to deal with a lot of, you know, payroll and unemployment and all those kinds of issues. And these are very real concerns. I do think we have to get more creative. And so for hiring, you know, your ad needs to be written specifically to what you're looking for with flexibility. I just keep saying over and over, we've got to give people more grace than we've ever had to give. And sometimes our big picture thoughts of what we need for our team might not be right now. You might really want 3 dental assistants and you only have 2. That's what you have right now. Being thankful and grateful for what you have. Is there a creative way to maybe divvy up more jobs throughout the practice? Is there a way to train somebody? Is there somebody who's taking virtual college that is available during the day and maybe do their studies at night? We have to think outside the box. I think we're doing a lot more training than we've ever done before as far as teaching someone dental administration or dental sterilization, or even dental assisting for that matter. So many of these people in these programs weren't able to complete their programs. So have them come complete their program in your practice, and then you get a great dental assistant out of it. So I think we have to be creative. And then with our hygienist population, that's a tough one right now, I guess. That's a hard one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, Mike and I kind of have seen the hygienist wages really climb over the last couple of years. Like over just the last 2 years, it seemed like some were down in the 28s, 30, 32s, and then it was 36, and then it was 40 and 42, 45, especially pre-COVID. And then COVID hit, and I think a lot of dentists thought, oh, this is great. They're all going to, everyone, especially those with the larger groups, pretty much got fired. As soon as this hit, the GSOs just fired everyone, told them to go on unemployment without knowing what was going to go on. They just got them off their books. And I think a lot of the private practice dentists thought, okay, this is great. I'll be able to scoop those hygienists up. But as everyone's come back full speed now, I think they're kind of asking for the same rate. So from an hourly rate, I know it's hard to say, but is there a premium now that needs to be put on the hygienist? Do you have to give them more hours, more dollars per hour, or do you have to start offering things like insurance if you're not, or simple plans or retirement plans? Do they like that? Is that something that speaks to their?
Yes. So again, we can talk specifically about the hygienist. So we want to, again, write our ad or however we're going to recruit to specifically what we want. We want our ideal first. Then we have to kind of break it apart from there. The competition is crazy. I don't know if you guys look at the ads as much as I do. I looked over the weekend. There was a $7,000 sign-on bonus being offered by a local dental practice. I don't know the specifics. I don't know when. I know. I said to my husband, I go, ooh, I'm glad I still have a license. I might go find that, that little sign-on bonus or nice sign-on bonus for a while. But how do you compete with that? And again, our specialty is private practice. So you're talking 1 to 2 owners. A lot of our clients are millennial owners, so they're newer. And how do you compete with a $7,000 sign-on bonus? That's really tough. So you have to appeal to somebody's culture. What are you going to be able to provide for them? Maybe that $7,000 sign-on bonus was someone working 45 hours a week and it was terrible. Maybe you're going to say, look, we're done by 3 o'clock every day. I can offer you, 3 to 6% match after a year of employment, or maybe you're going to give them an exorbitant amount of vacation time off because that's worth it to you. You've got to find what meets their need. I was in a meeting yesterday with a hygienist and I put together a pretty sweet deal for her. She's in a bonus system where she's making $1,000 to $3,000 extra a month. That's what motivated her, was the ability to have this great bonus system. And the doctor's been a doctor for a long time. And she said, I've never done a bonus system like this before. And I said, we've got to find something that keeps this hygienist happy and engaged, but then also brings more finances into the practice. So don't be afraid to go outside your box. I don't care if you've been a dentist for 20 some years and you've never had a hygiene bonus. If that's what it's going to take to keep somebody there, think about it from a logical standpoint. If you're motivating this hygienist to produce X amount per day, that means the practice is going to get X amount more that day too. Yeah. So we really have to think outside of that hourly, $38 an hour kind of thing. ZipRecruiter apparently right now in the Milwaukee area has hygienists being listed as making $44 an hour. So I had a hygienist remind me of that last week because she kept telling me she was paid too low. And I said, you are getting full benefits, full medical benefits. You're getting a bonus system. You're getting simple IRA with match. You're getting medical, family dental rather. And I just, kept backing up my doctor. And she pulls this out and she's like, ZipRecruiter says Milwaukee is $44 an hour. And I was like, damn it, ZipRecruiter.
Yeah, but I think what you said there is really important because, that 44, whatever you offer on the front, the hard offer that you give them, someone comes in and you're in, some of our dentists are kind of in a tough spot right now. If someone came in and said, I need $46 an hour, sight unseen, they might say, great, here, I'll give that to you. But those are really sticky, right? You're not going to be able to go to that hygienist in 6 months when she's not performing or he's not performing, and you say, well, hey, we're going to take you down to 42 because you're really not performing, right? So that is a given. What I liked what you said about the bonus system is really nice. I think that's the best way to go about it. If you hit these numbers, and obviously the biggest number for us is 3.3 times their hourly, right? If they're hitting those from an hourly production, compared to their wage, then you get your bonuses, right? And that way it kind of keeps you in check. But I know what you both are saying, it's a really tough environment right now, so you almost have to give up a lot. But at the same time, I think the dentists can give up a lot, but still protect themselves if they go in kind of a bonus structure on the hygiene side. And I think it makes the right hygienist, it motivates the right way, right?
For sure. And also, Rob, to the point of increasing in growth, the offer that we had yesterday with that particular hygienist, every 90 days, we evaluate her production and the percentage of her growth. Mm-hmm. So as the practice improves and increases, she can improve and increase, obviously, her production as well. So that skin is in the game as also, because I just told her, I said, we're coming off of COVID. We're not even starting this production bonus for you until September. Like, this isn't happening right now. Like, this isn't happening. So just being real with the team and communicating and telling them, look, this is why we're starting this now, and this is why it's going to happen. And the other thing, and a total side tangent, then if you're going to have those communications with your team, then keep your big purchases off social media, because then you're going to look like the biggest hypocrite on the planet. So that is the biggest way to tick off your staff, is when you tell them you can't give them a bonus or you can't pay them a certain amount of money, and then your wife just puts on social media that she loves her new Peloton. So please don't do that. That makes everybody really angry. Not that you have a right to spend your money however you want. But
coming off this period of time where a lot of the consulting out there was really analytics driven and very much in the essentially a camp of, we have to get staff wages down to 20% or 18%. And that just may not be the reality anymore. And I mean, we do have interesting cases out there, all the outliers who, to some extent, I would come in and say, overall you're overpaying your staff, but if the pie is growing, and at some point it doesn't matter. So getting the right person in every place is going to be more beneficial, help that practice grow. Even with COVID, even before COVID, there was always problem staff. What's the best way to deal with them? I mean, we've talked about being empathetic to people's needs right now, and certainly maybe people have a little more latitude, but there's still problem employees. Is it a matter of you're just best off getting rid of them, even if you don't necessarily have another solution right away, or do you kind of let them continue on until you find somebody else?
Yeah, that's a great question too, because we did utilize COVID to not bring team members back. So I think I went to all clients and said, look, thinking about this person for years. Let's do this now. This is the most easy way just to not bring them back. They're not getting a job offer back. Obviously, if everybody did what they were supposed to, when you were coming back from shutdown, you gave everybody terms and you rehired, depending on how they were classed during COVID. Were they unemployed? Were they fired? Were they laid off? Were they furloughed? All those different things. So we did do that in several cases. Now we're bringing all these people back because we're so busy and patients want to be seen. And some of those same old cultural issues are cropping up again. This person's being late for work again, as they always are. Let's use that as a classic example. And now they can use their kids as even a bigger excuse because their kids are home and blah, blah, blah. So as far as I'm aware, and as far as we're told from our legal team and our legal advice that we work with, it doesn't matter what's going on. If somebody still possesses those same characteristics, they can still be released. So it's a great time to release people. And especially, let's use that chronically late person, disturbs your team. It's not a benefit. We all know that those people are not great to have on our teams. However, with firing that person, be aware that spot will probably go vacant for a while. It is not, the hiring in between is much longer. It's the longest I've ever seen it. It is frustrating for me because I want my clients to be happy, and they're not happy when they're sitting for a month or two with a vacancy in their practice. So if we're thinking about doing that, let's get our documentation in order. So number one, we're releasing somebody legally because people know their rights and they can come up with all kinds of great stories. And then we can do a confidential ad, or we can start looking kind of on the backside of things. So I've been relying a lot more and more on our networks, different outings that we're having. Like tonight, we're hosting a socially distanced dental hygiene happy hour at Moe's. We could only have 10 hygienists come, but that's the standard and that's what we're doing. And so we're trying to build these networks again so that our clients have hopefully team members if they need them, because tonight I guarantee before I leave, I'll find out if someone's not happy with their job, or if they're looking, or they want more hours or whatever. And we have to think outside the box if we're looking to replace people and find new employees. So everything is business as usual when it comes to firing an employee, releasing somebody. It's
it's a good advertisement for our next, not that we need to hop, but next podcast, we are having an attorney on talking on employment law for that very reason.
Yeah,
the legal side of it. I think he's going to hash out more, what's available on the paid sick leave, but also what it takes, when you are firing, like what rights do they have? Are they different, as you kind of touched on, but definitely don't want to get too deep into it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. That'll be a good one too, Rob.
I guess one final question before we let you go, and in terms of scheduling regimes and whatnot, there's always been a lot of talk of block scheduling, and people have never really gotten an opportunity to do so. But kind of touching back to what you were touching on before, should clients go more into a scheduling block whereby if people are canceling because they're afraid or stuff like that, they're not going to get prime appointments anymore? The 5 o'clock on Thursday type appointment.
I think, the block scheduling, everybody's interpretation of block scheduling is incredibly different. I always find it very fascinating. And when somebody says, I want block scheduling implemented, I always ask them, what does that mean to you? So in some cases it's, we're only doing SRP on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. We're only doing Crown appointments at 9 a.m. We do have some clients who they don't want to do crowns in the evening. They say, I want all my crowns in the morning. I want them done in the morning. But in regards to COVID preventions and kind of scheduling a COVID-like schedule, I think more important than putting different types of procedures places is staggering start times. You want to evaluate how many patients are in your reception area at one time, how many patients are checking out at one time. You don't want all of your hygiene starting at the same time and ending at the same time. There's no doctor who can get all of his or her hygiene appointments done and their exams done at the same time. So staggering is not a bad idea anyway. But in terms of checking in, checking out, the flow of the practice, everybody needs to not be in the same place at once. And I think that's one thing COVID has really highlighted is how much we need to stagger. And that would be the type of block scheduling that I would start thinking of for COVID, is just evaluating those start times and end times.
We'd like to thank Corey and Jill for being here. Check them out at customdentalsolutions.com. They've done a great job for a lot of our clients, I think, because they're able to come in and fit whatever your specific need happens to be versus here is their system, and can work on big problems, little problems, medium problems, everything in between. Next week, we're going to have Rob Driscoll from Reinhardt Law in to talk about Family First Act and some of the rights employees now have with coronavirus, in terms of that kind of stuff. So he's going to be great to have on. But thank you guys for being on. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us or reach out to them, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yep, have a good one.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to The Cornermen. Be sure to leave us a review and subscribe to us wherever podcasts are found. For more insights and information, visit us at bullmoosefinancial.com.